Hey everybody, it's Professor Parish. I know that this is week 2 now, so we're going to start doing some different assignments with week 2, and I know I've posted a video already explaining the vocabulary and the questions assignments that you guys will start week 2, but I wanted to give you guys a video that explains how to do the article review, which is kind of a separate assignment that's different than what's in our textbook. So what it is that I will give you guys an article. We only do 3 of these assignments, so you'll get one in week 2, one in week 4, and then one in week 6. And what these do is that they kind of allow you to expand beyond just our textbook and look at writings that I've provided to you and kind of do some what we call guided notes. So I think it's a nice technique to develop as a student to understand that when you read something, you can absolutely take notes on what you read. When I was a student, I was very hesitant at first to write in the margins of my textbook in pencil or to take notes because I thought, I don't want to do that. I just want to absorb it all at once when I read it. But if you have trouble with reading comprehension, or if you find remembering things that you read difficult, I think it is helpful to, as you read, take a list of notes of your thoughts, of your questions, of things you don't understand, so that when you go back to those notes, you'll be like, oh yeah, I did read that, and oh yeah, I was thinking of that. Because you know how when you start a list, if you don't list everything down, you might forget about it. That's kind of the idea here, is that you read an article and that you take notes so that you don't forget any questions that you have or things that you like or are concerned about. So that's kind of what this assignment is for. It's just going to be 3 articles for weeks 2, 4, and 6, where you guys will read a short article, do kind of a guided notes assignment with it, and then turn that in. So I'm going to switch the views of the computer here, and we are going to look at the example that I provided to you, and then look at the guidelines for article review number 1. All right, so this is our page. If I go to resources and I click, and I will actually scroll down to week 2. So right now I have both the example article and the article guidelines, and you'll note that article 1 is not due until Sunday, June 17th at 11:55 p.m. So you've got a little while to work on this, but let me show you the example article first. All right, so this example article just shows you, don't pay attention to this right here. What I'm concerned with is this article itself. So you'll see that what they've done is highlighted in yellow, and beside it wrote down their thoughts. Now, I use little text lingo and things here in my horrible attempts to seem hip. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to do smiley faces or text speak or text talk or anything like that. You can just write out what you're thinking. But what I do like about this example is that the aspects that you talk about are highlighted. So that lets me know out to the side, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, you're talking about this right here. Gives me a better idea. And so this example shows you where they've highlighted throughout and where they've underlined things and kind of wrote out to the side. That's what I'm looking for, is that when you read this article, you are commenting out to the side. You're highlighting things that you like or things that you're interested in, that your assignment will look like this. So there's not really a lot of writing that you'll actually do. I mean, these are just little choppy short sentences and phrases, but I want to see that you are comprehending what you read and that you're taking notes. That's kind of the idea about this. And I think this is a good skill to develop, because the more college classes that you take, the more you're going to find out that it is helpful to take notes as you read and to kind of give yourself a guide of things to look over later on, because you'll probably have tests over things that you read. So this helps to where you're not like just scrolling through a book fast-paced during a text or a test going, where's that thing I was looking at? You'll have a guided notes set up for you like so. So this is the example. You don't worry about this bottom part. I'm not concerned with that. What I mainly want with your assignment is that you are just highlighting and underlining throughout the text, and then out to the side you're commenting what you think or your thoughts or notes about what you've read. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of that, and I'm going to go to our guidelines for number 1. All right, so the actual article is in the guidelines itself. So your assignment is right here, and you keep scrolling down. Okay, So what I would like for you to do is to read the article below, and as you read, I would like you to highlight or point out or comment on what the thesis is, which is the main idea of the article. And your thesis can be in a number of places. Typically, the author is going to put the main idea of the article either at the very beginning of it or at the very end in the conclusion. Sometimes authors sprinkle it throughout, but for the most part, it's going to be in either the introduction or conclusion. So I want to know what the thesis or the main idea of the entire article is, and I want you to point that out to me. Let me know what the points of the paper are. So what is the article going to discuss? What are the main focal points of the article? And usually the author will sort this by paragraph. So if there's a paragraph about one type of conflict in literature, that's a point. If there's a paragraph about another conflict, that's a second point, and so on and so forth. So I just want you to point those out, pun intended, to me in the article. And then any supporting details. So if a paragraph's talking about internal conflict, like conflict within a character, you would point out in that paragraph a comment that would say, this paragraph is about internal conflict. And then if they give an example, like for instance, Hamlet, Shakespeare's play Hamlet, focuses all about Hamlet's conflict within himself. So you might put a comment out to the side that says, for example, they talk about Hamlet. That's all I'm looking for, is just some support that you recognize is within the paragraph. And then if you have any favorite lines or segments, if something stands out and you're like, oh, that's really cool or interesting, or yeah, I've seen that a lot. I've seen that in a movie I just watched. You can put a comment out to the side and explain that. And then I'd like for you to show me where the conclusion is. I know it seems simple, but you will be surprised how many students leave out conclusions in their writing. They just leave it out, and the writing ends. And I'm so confused. I'm like, oh, this is really good. And then the writing just stops, and there's no conclusion. And I'm not sure why authors leave that out or why students leave that out in their writing, but you have to have a conclusion. Your story or your piece of writing, even if it's not creative writing, even if it's an essay or a short mini response, it has to be like a sandwich. It has to have an introduction, a conclusion, and the body in the middle. It's got to have those pieces of the bread. The intro and the conclusion are like pieces of bread in a sandwich. You have to have them. Otherwise, it just falls apart, right? So definitely point out where that is as well, okay? And as you can see here, I've got make a comment, and I'm about to show you how to do that. And then save this document to your computer, save it to your email, whatever you need to save it to, and then you can upload it to the Dropbox by the 17th. Okay? So you may be asking yourself, how do I highlight, how do I make a comment and do what you're asking me to? So here is the article, and there's pictures and fun things to it. It's not incredibly long, but they do go over 6 conflicts that we see in stories, and I think this is interesting because you hear a lot of the time in the headlines about movies nowadays lacking creativity or originality. And a lot of English scholars will actually point out that there's really only so many plots and conflicts that we can have in stories. It's the characters and the situations that make them unique. So this article kind of talks a little bit about that, which I think is interesting. But let's talk about the thesis, for example. A lot of times authors will pose the thesis as either a question posed to the audience or an answer that is given to the audience. So that's not always the case, and your thesis statement that you think this paper is about may be different than one of your fellow students, and both of you could be right. The thesis could be spread out throughout this entire paper. As long as the statements that you two make are similar, I will count that. So, for example, a student may believe that this is the thesis. Not quite. It is a question, but what are story conflicts doesn't exactly tell me what the whole paper's about, right? So, what about this sentence though? Conflict, such as a power struggle between a hero or protagonist and villain or antagonist, is arguably the most important element of fiction because without conflict there's no movement and no narrative drive. That seems pretty important, right? So that may or may not be the thesis you pick out. You may read on in this paragraph and in this paper and say, no, I found something more specific. or something that I like better as the thesis, or that I believe is the thesis. But let's say, just for this assignment, that this is what you pick. All right? All right, so let's say that this is the sentence that you pick. Okay? What you can do is, through Microsoft Word, you can press your mouse down and kind of hover it over the part that you think you want to highlight or comment on. All right, so what I'm going to do is, let me stretch this out for a second. All right, so what I'm going to do is show you, in Word, will go up here to Review. I'm going to turn what we call, you can turn track changes on and off, and that just means it'll show you where you edit it. I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, you will see a section that says Make a Comment, or there'll be a little green box that says Add a Comment. So I'm going to do that, and you'll notice my little comment pops up, and it's going to comment on where I highlighted, and I can type out something like, this, I believe, is the thesis of the paper. There you go. Part 1 is done, and once you click out, it'll show that. Now, if you don't want to comment, if you just want to highlight it, if you don't want to leave a comment, then just go to Home, and you will see it. It will either look like a little marker with a line, or it'll be this, and it'll say Text Highlight. And you can change the color. I personally like blue, so I'm going to make it blue. And then you kind of do the same thing. You highlight over it, and now this comment's in the way, so you can't see it. But if I exit out the comment, it shows that it is in blue. And I can always just comment over this one part and just say this is the thesis. And do that. See? So the two tools that you will need to do to complete this assignment are, once you pick up the article, you'll need to either use the comment feature that is in the review section of Word, or if you go to Home, use the highlighter. Those are the only tools that you'll need, and that will let you highlight throughout this paper the important parts, and then you can use the comment button to label what each of them are. So I'm mainly looking for these 5 things in your paper: what the thesis is, the points, supporting details, your favorite line or segment or passages, which are paragraphs, and then the conclusion. I'm looking for those 5 things identified in this paper. So you should be highlighting them using the highlight button, and you should be commenting out to the side to tell me which part is which. Okay? As always, you can ask questions, you can email me, you can say, hey, am I doing this right? And send me what you've got so far. It's not due till June 17th, that Sunday night, so you've got plenty of time to work on this, but I wanted to go ahead and show you all how to do this assignment. All right? So I hope you're enjoying the class. I've really liked your discussion forum posts so far, and the grammar samplers have been going good. So I'm going to talk more about those on June 11th and kind of go over that. All right? So have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys soon.